Imagine a quiet farming town where nothing ever seems to change, until the summer of 1867, when an 8-year-old boy steps into the center of one of the strangest mysteries in American history. His name was Timothy Caldwell, and by the time he arrived in Sedalia, Missouri, 3 people and dozens of animals would end up dead under circumstances no one could explain. Dr. Samuel Harding, the only doctor in the county, tried to chronicle what he saw in 3 leather-bound journals. But even decades later, his notes sound more like a horror story than a medical case study. Most people thought Timothy was just a shy, polite kid. But there's a reason the sheriff's men kept the official records sealed for more than 100 years. There was something about Timothy that science, faith, and even common sense couldn't describe. In just 6 months, the shadow around him grew, and the townsfolk started to wonder, could a child actually be responsible for a trail of death? Cases of so-called evil children are rare but not unheard of. Even today, scientists still debate whether some people are born without empathy. In the 19th century, though, the belief was simple. Children were naturally innocent, empty slates shaped by their upbringing. The idea that a child could be bad to the bone? Almost unthinkable. But in Sedalia, Missouri, the deaths kept happening. And as we begin to piece together Timothy Caldwell's story, you might find yourself questioning everything you thought you knew about good and evil. If stories like this are your kind of mystery, take a moment right now to hit the subscribe button and ring that notification bell. And while you're here, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing just how far these chilling tales reach. But what Timothy did next was even more chilling than anyone imagined. Before Timothy arrived, life on the Caldwell farm was already marked by hardship. Missouri in 1867 was still healing from the trauma of the Civil War. Empty chairs at supper, families trying to rebuild, debts and lost dreams everywhere you looked. James Caldwell never came back from the Battle of Wilson's Creek, leaving his wife Martha and their grown son Thomas behind. Martha did her best to save the farm, but she was gone by winter, lost to consumption. So when news came that William Caldwell had died in prison, leaving a widow and his young son Timothy, Thomas saw both a burden and a way to keep the farm running. Timothy, just 8 years old, arrived with nothing but a cloth bag, his eyes distant, his face older than his years. Thomas and his wife Sarah weren't ready for a child. Years of loneliness and disappointment had made them stern, and Timothy fit right in, quiet, hardworking, almost invisible. But Missouri wasn't alone in having families turned upside down by war. Across the state, thousands of orphans and foster children were absorbed into households toughened by loss. Child welfare systems as we know them didn't exist in the 1860s. Kids were expected to work, help, and deal with sorrow quietly. People blamed bad behavior on bad upbringing or personal tragedy, not something darker brewing underneath. Here's a question for you. What do you think causes true evil in a person? Is it born inside us, or does the world make it? Before we continue with Timothy's story, don't forget to like this video if you want more unsolved mysteries and dark true stories from America's shadowy past. By the time Timothy settled into the Caldwell home, something had already begun to shift, and it wouldn't be long before the entire community would feel it. People said Timothy was the perfect farm boy. He worked from sunup to sunset, rarely complained, and always answered adults with yes sir and yes ma'am. His pale skin burned easy, and his eyes, ice blue, almost colorless, watched everything. Dr. Harding first met him during a supply trip into town. The doctor, trained to spot signs of trauma or unrest, couldn't quite put his finger on it. Timothy wasn't shy or awkward. He just seemed to be watching, calculating, like he was the one studying the doctor. Neighbors noticed other odd things. Elenina Patterson, whose farm bordered the Caldwells, often saw Timothy working alone, never playing like other kids. "It's like watching a little machine," she told her husband. Even their chickens noticed. Whenever Timothy came close to the fence, the birds scattered, refusing to go near. Maybe the animals sensed something wasn't right, even before the adults did. Modern psychologists sometimes call this the mask of sanity. Children or adults who seem polite, well-behaved, even charming, but who don't seem to feel emotion the way others do. Animals, it turns out, often recognize this disconnect faster than humans. Dogs have been known to react with fear or aggression toward people with these cold, flat affect, something researchers have studied as early as the 20th century. If you're absorbing all these details, don't forget to hit that like button and let us know in the comments. Have you ever met someone whose niceness seemed a little too perfect, but then tragedy struck the community? A loss that would change the way everyone looked at Timothy Caldwell. The first tragedy unfolded on a hot August day. 5-year-old Mary Fletcher, daughter of the blacksmith, was known for her bright laughter and her habit of wandering off to explore. That night, as the Fletchers prepared for supper, Timothy knocked at their door. His clothes were damp, his face pale, but his voice didn't shake. "Mrs. Fletcher, I found Mary by the creek. She's not breathing." A search party rushed to Willow Creek, where Mary lay face down in just 1.5 feet of water. Dr. Harding examined her. "Drowning," he said. Rural Missouri had seen accidents like this before, with children drawn to water and little supervision. But what caught Harding's attention was Timothy's account. The boy described the exact spot, the position of Mary's body, even the way her dress was tangled on a branch. His memory was precise, almost clinical. Today, experts know that trauma can sharpen a child's memories, or, in some, cause them to freeze up or forget. But Timothy didn't sound shocked or devastated, even though he claimed he'd stumbled on her while searching for a lost calf. His uncle confirmed the calf had gone missing that morning, except it later turned up in a field far from the creek. Back then, child drownings were tragically common. In the late 1800s, children accounted for a large portion of rural accidental deaths, especially near rivers and creeks. Communities mourned, but a vigilant eye for foul play was rare, especially when the hero of the hour was a quiet, helpful child. Here's something for you. Was Timothy just observant, or do you think there was something more unsettling beneath that careful recollection? Tell us your thoughts in the comments. Before we get to what happened next, take a second to breathe. These tragedies get darker and more bizarre as the days pass. Just a few weeks after Mary Fletcher's funeral, the town was struck again, this time by a death even harder to explain. Old Henrik Lynn, known for his Norwegian stubbornness and steady hands, was found at the foot of Devil's Bluff. He'd gone up the rocky outcrop like he often did to check on his beloved wild beehives. But when Timothy wandered by on his way home from town, he spotted Henrik's hat caught in some bushes below. A crowd gathered as Timothy explained, "I called out for Mr. Lynn but got no answer, so I climbed down to look." Henrik's body was sprawled on the rocks, neck broken. Clear a fall from the 40-foot cliff was deadly. Yet around the body a strange detail, scores of dead bees, more than anyone had ever seen that far from a hive. Dr. Harding examined the scene and found the beehives at the top untouched, bees calm and undisturbed. If Henrik had been attacked by a swarm, wouldn't the chaos have started at the top? Rural 19th century medicine had no real forensics. Accidents stayed accidents unless someone confessed. Still, old-timers mumbled that Henrik knew the bluff better than any man alive. A slip now after all these years? It didn't add up. In historical records, children have sometimes been witnesses to tragedy, but rarely are they present at so many so close together. Stories like these would later feed America's fascination with accidental deaths and the question of whether chance or intent lies at the root. But this was only the beginning. The deaths had something in common. Timothy was always near, always the one to find the victims. And soon the next loss would be even more chilling. Jacob Mills was only 6 when he vanished into the thick Missouri woods. His family, frantic, organized a search with neighbors combing through brush, calling Jacob's name over and over. Timothy volunteered to help. For 3 days he kept up with grown men, leading them through trails even old-timers barely remembered. He said he spent hours in those woods alone, learning every path and hidden hollow. On the 4th day, just as hope was running out, Timothy showed up at the Mills cabin at dawn. "I think I found something," he whispered. He led Jacob's father to an old half-collapsed well, hidden by years of debris. Down inside, they found Jacob, alive but barely. The doctor came fast, but Jacob was too weak. He died within hours, having survived nearly 4 days trapped at the bottom. Harding watched Timothy that night, noticing the boy's eyes didn't leave Jacob, studying every flicker of breath, every sign of fading life. Timothy looked less like a boy in shock, more like a student examining a specimen. Hidden wells were a real danger back then. Farms across America had hundreds tucked away under brush, often forgotten until tragedy struck. but surviving for so long, and Timothy's insistence that he heard crying from deep underground. Even Dr. Harding had his doubts. Modern psychology tells us that most children are deeply empathetic. Seeing suffering usually upsets them or prompts them to help. But what about a child who watches, cataloging pain without any hint of emotion? What do you make of Timothy? Is there a reasonable explanation for his perfect timing, or is something darker at work? Comment with your theories below. If you're drawn into this mystery, don't forget to subscribe. There's plenty more to reveal about the boy science just couldn't explain. As Timothy's story unfolded, Dr. Harding saw the same pattern everywhere. Accidents and bad luck hanging over anyone and anything that crossed the Caldwell property. Dead chickens appeared in neat little piles, necks broken with surgical precision. Pigs and calves suffered wounds that didn't fit the chaos of typical farm mishaps. Some said foxes were to blame, but the deaths looked almost deliberate. Harding's investigation grew quiet and careful. He checked the animals himself, noticing how the breaks and injuries matched up with just enough knowledge to kill. Nothing wasted, nothing wild about it. On nearby farms, neighbors whispered about strange encounters. Timothy spotted near the fence line the night before their best calf died, or asking odd questions about wounds and healing during visits. What's chilling is that modern criminologists agree animal cruelty is one of the earliest warning signs of something called psychopathy, especially when it's methodical. Later, infamous cases like Mary Bell and Jesse Pomeroy would show what happens when this pattern goes unchecked in children: cruelty, curiosity, and zero remorse. Even the adults started to feel unsettled. Timothy would ask Dr. Harding about death, how to tell if someone was truly gone, how quickly a wound could kill. He absorbed every answer, never reacting, only storing it away. But the most disturbing evidence was yet to emerge. An accidental death is tragedy. But what if someone is testing, learning, and planning for something worse? Don't go anywhere. The secret Timothy kept hidden would change everything the quiet farming community thought they knew about monsters. One fall afternoon, Dr. Harding's suspicions drew him to a cave Timothy once mentioned as his thinking place. What he found inside shattered any illusion that the deaths and accidents were random. Scattered across the dirt were animal bones, carefully sorted by size, and rough tools made from broken farm implements. On the cave walls and littered in a box were drawings, disturbingly detailed for an 8-year-old, with notes describing pain, injury, and death. Timothy had turned the cave into a laboratory of cruelty. The drawings didn't just show animals, they were diagrams, with descriptions about how each animal responded to different wounds, how long it took for them to die, what broke them fastest. Some sketches depicted people: Mary, Henrik, Jacob. Each had notes, cold, clinical, speculating about human pain. Early criminal profilers, decades later, would say this kind of behavior signals a mind fascinated by suffering, one that seeks control, knowledge, and even satisfaction from others' pain. At the time, though, most adults dismissed violent behavior in children as a phase or the effect of a troubled home. They had no words for psychopath or serial killer in 1867. While tales of bad seed children sound like urban legends, history records real cases. Kids who, left unchecked and misunderstood, left terror in their wake. If this story is giving you chills, share it with a friend who loves dark mysteries. And let us know in the comments, if you stumbled on a cave like this, what would you do? Call the law or keep it secret? Because for Dr. Harding, exposing the truth about Timothy would risk everything. But waiting too long could mean more deaths. Dr. Harding knew he couldn't stay silent. He confronted Timothy, hoping to reach the scared child behind the mask, but instead, he found someone chillingly self-assured. Out in the pasture, away from the house, Harding laid out everything he'd discovered in the cave: the drawings, the bones, the cruel little notes. Timothy didn't flinch. He just listened, then smiled, a smile that finally reached his eyes, but in a way that felt cold and wrong. "You're not going to tell anyone," Timothy said, calm as could be. "No one would believe you. You want to see what I'll do next." It was true. Harding realized some part of him was both horrified and fascinated. He pressed Timothy. "How long have you been doing this?" Timothy shrugged. "Since I was 5. I started with bugs, then birds and mice. Bigger things later. Animals, people, it's not that different. People just know what's happening." Timothy admitted he wanted to learn what happened when you hurt someone who trusted you. His eyes flicked toward the farmhouse. Criminal psychologists have a name for this type of person: a charmer, manipulative, and fearless. Child killers like Mary Bell or Jesse Pomeroy, decades after Timothy, showed similar traits: chilling calm, methodical violence, and an ability to outwit adults at every step. What would you have done in Dr. Harding's shoes? Confront the boy? Go straight to the sheriff? Or pretend nothing was wrong and try to keep everyone safe? Harding's choice would trigger the most dangerous and violent chapter yet. The law in 1867 wasn't ready for a child like Timothy Caldwell. Sheriff Crawford, after hearing Dr. Harding's evidence and seeing Timothy's terrifying grip on detail, faced an impossible choice. There were drawings, yes, disturbing sketches, precise notes, methods and intentions clear as day for anyone willing to look beneath the child's polite surface. But to most, the idea was unthinkable. Children weren't seen as capable of real evil, and courts didn't know what to do when the killer was only 8. With no legal grounds to prosecute him as an adult, and too much risk to send him back to any home, they made a compromise. Timothy would be sent to the Missouri State Hospital for the Insane, not as punishment, but to study and treat him using the era's most advanced alienist practices. In the end, it was the attempted murder of his aunt and uncle witnessed by sheriff's deputies that convinced authorities something had to be done, even if no law covered it. At that time, legal responsibility for children was often murky. There were no established juvenile courts, and children younger than 9 were presumed not to understand right from wrong in many American states. Even famed cases in later years, like that of Jesse Pomeroy in Boston, left judges and doctors scrambling for answers. What do you think? Should a child as young as Timothy face adult consequences for terrible crimes? Or is there always hope for rehabilitation, even for the darkest cases? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Because in Timothy's case, removing him from Sedalia didn't mean anyone was out of danger. Inside the asylum, Timothy was anything but defeated. He watched the doctors, nurses, and other patients, learning how to mimic whatever emotion the staff wanted to see. His written rehabilitation journaling, a practice popular among 19th-century doctors, hid coded notes behind simple words. It took Dr. Martha Fitzgerald weeks to realize those childlike diary entries were ciphers, revealing sinister plans and methodical observations about everyone around him. Hospital life in the 1800s was nothing like today. Staff were overworked and security was minimal, especially for a child. Timothy watched, waited, adapted. Deaths began cropping up that bore his dark fingerprints. Elderly patients dying of supposed heart failure right after his visits. Younger patients suffering accidents in places Timothy had recently been. Night staff whispered about seeing him standing silently in doorways, watching them with those unnerving eyes. It's not the first time a dangerous mind used ciphers to hide intent. In later years, infamous criminals like the Zodiac Killer would baffle police with strange hidden codes. But Timothy's strategy was rare for a child, and terrifying in its sophistication. And then, the unthinkable happened. Timothy Caldwell vanished. He escaped the asylum under circumstances never fully explained, slipping past guards and locks the way a fox slips from a snare. It shook the medical community, and left a chilling question. What happens when a brilliant, remorseless child grows up on the run? If this twist in the story is giving you chills, let us know. Would you want to see a follow-up about real-life asylum escapes or shocking criminal ciphers? Drop a comment, or send this video to a friend who loves these unnerving true tales. Timothy's escape was only the beginning. The shadows he left behind were about to spread. After Timothy disappeared, stories started to spread through Missouri and beyond. Farms in distant counties reported accidents that sounded unsettlingly familiar. Animals killed with odd precision, children found in places they shouldn't have been, and unsettlingly, people claiming to see a polite, unusually clever young boy nearby just before tragedy struck. Dr. Harding, even after retiring, quietly collected these reports. He linked them in his private journals: strange, methodical deaths, odd helpfulness from children whose faces were either never identified or who vanished soon after. The Midwest, already full of tall tales and haunted places, now had its own living nightmare. A boy who had mastered the art of blending in and moving on when things got too hot. There are real-life escapees from 19th-century asylums often aided by lax security and sympathetic staff, but rarely did anyone vanish as completely as Timothy. Some say stories like his grew into the urban legends of the Midwest, a stranger who arrives, evil in disguise, then slips back into the dark. That kernel of truth buried in official reports and in Dr. Harding's exhaustive files only fueled the rumors. How do mysteries like this grow and spread? Sometimes it's the unknown that terrifies us most. A shadow just outside the lamplight, a face in the window you can't quite remember. What's your theory? Could Timothy's later crimes ever be proven? Or do you think the truth simply vanished with him? Drop your thoughts below. And if you know a friend who loves strange, unsolved stories, send this video their way to see what they think. Even today, the question echoes, was Timothy ever really gone? The legacy of Timothy Caldwell lingers like a warning from the past. After Thomas and Sarah Caldwell recovered from their ordeal, they left their farm forever, unable to stay where they'd unknowingly harbored a killer. The land was eventually sold off, but neighbors claimed the area never felt right again. Sheriff Crawford ordered Timothy's cave sealed, but the legend grew. Some insisted animals still refused to graze near it, and others whispered about strange sightings years after Timothy vanished. Dr. Harding left behind his journals, which were eventually donated to the Missouri Historical Society. These records, detailing his relentless quest to understand Timothy and the dozens of similar chilling cases he tracked, became some of the earliest documents in America's study of childhood psychopathy. Harding's last words reveal his deepest fear. Timothy was not alone. He was a glimpse into what people become when stripped of empathy and conscience. Today, we know more about conditions like psychopathy and conduct disorder in children, but treatment, and even recognition, remains controversial. What never changes is how stories like Timothy's force us to question what it means to be human, and whether true evil is always lurking in the least expected places. So after everything you've heard, what do you think? Was the whole truth ever revealed about Timothy Caldwell? Or might there be more to his fate than the records suggest? Leave your comment below. I'd love to know what you believe about this case. If you made it to the end of this dark journey, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss our deepest dives into history's most unsettling mysteries. And remember, sometimes true stories are far scarier than any fiction.